Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Yellowstone Season 2, Episode 10. So, we have some kind of impactful things going on in this story, but then also, we have some kind of just, really one goal of an episode, which is to really just get Tate back, figure out who is to have him, and then kill your way to make your way to Tate. So, going into this episode, I kind of have mixed feelings about it because it kind of felt very one goal centered, but then there's to be some kind of shots being fired on both sides of things. There wasn't this big uncovering mystery of stuff with this episode. There wasn't this oh my god, we were to find out that it was this person all along. It wasn't that kind of episode. It was a very simple, very just the people who were to have done it were the people who were to have done it, and wrapped it up in a nice, neat little bow. So, going into this episode, we do get quite a few people killed off in this episode because it's a season finale. So, going also in this episode, we have certain characters who are to be developed as much more prominent than they were to have been before. So, I'll guarantee people that once we get into spoilers, I'll probably be all over the place, but I'll at least have hopefully covered most of this episode. So I think that's to just be the end goal of just to come up with as much information about this episode as I can. Excuse me, and just deliver that. So I'm kind of just wondering, what has really been, everyone's big moments for the season. Maybe it really just comes down to also this episode, and I can understand that. So, where is this episode all to really just teeing it up version of this, which may include some spoilers. So, teeing it up, what is this episode really about? Well, besides the goal to get Tate back, we also have some things going on with certain characters. We have something developing on the side of Jenkins. We have something also giving one character Rip a kind of happy ending here, or something that is to, I guess, make him much more happier. We also get an interesting flashback from John's father, and I thought that was kind of an interesting play out to kind of showcase where we're heading in here. And so other than that, it's just kind of the push to just get Tate. And Jamie doesn't have much to do in this episode besides just kind of appear here and there in certain places. But very small cast of people in this episode. So with this being this massive thing going on. So yeah, not much other than that to really say here. So I'm going to go out of my way to say that it's probably about that time yet again to go into spoilers. Normally, I probably would have gone on and done 2 episodes because that seems to be the regular thing to do. But with this being a season finale thing, I decided I don't want to have to rigmarole and have to go on and have to say this is season 2, but then it's also season 3. It would just be convenient to just do 1 episode and then go on and just go into a clean cut season without having do a weird goofy search things where it's well, what season is this? What's going on? So, with that said, let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into this thing called spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time we need to spoil this episode. So, very beginning of this episode, we have a flashback between John and John Dutton Sr., who I guess John is to be seemingly living the last of his days. It seems that John Dutton Sr. is bedridden, and so John Dutton Sr. is to make his way to this one rock where both John and John Sr. are going and talking. And so John Sr., of course, is to mention that he really misses his wife and that he was to eventually like cherish the moments of like reactions from certain uh, like grandkids or even John himself at some point when he was a kid, and that John Sr. was to eventually realize that John used to go off and sneak cookies, and he figured it out. So really that was kind of like a nice, neat little send off to John Sr. and just kind of a reflection on where this story is going to head. So now John, of course, is desperately going and wanting to find Tate. And so we have Sheriff Donnie who is to tell, like, John, it's like, well, hey, like, if you're going to do this, you got to do this the right way. And, like, go through, like, livestock and, like, come up with some kind of excuse to eventually go after these people. And so John Dutton's like, well, hey, like, you gotta choose a side now. Like, there is no, like, there is no black and white about it. Like, or there is no gray area about this. Like, you have to choose a side now. So Sheriff Dutton eventually goes and pulls over Malcolm Beck. And so Malcolm is to mention, of course, like, hey, like, is there something wrong with my taillights? And like I think that was kind of a weird reference to Walking Tall, because I remember Dwayne, he ended up going and breaking the guy's taillights. So Sheriff Donnie is going and having Malcolm forcibly pop the trunk of this car, and we have Malcolm Beck who's like, hey man, like, you have a lot of skeletons in your closet to be trying to play at this game. And so with the exchange of dialogue, Sheriff Donnie is to just say like, hey man, like, I'm not on your side anymore. And Malcolm Beck is to go on and call one of his people to just be like, hey man, like, this sheriff is like, it's not working for us anymore, so we got to scramble and kind of figure out how we can go on and like hide this kid. So we now have like a bunch of like events all kind of leading up to the eventual end result of what is to be, like, are they going to find Tate? Are they going to rescue Tate? Is Tate still alive? So, kind of thing. So, Jenkins evidently is to be kind of at his home, and so he seemingly hasn't been sleeping in I don't know how many days. And so his FBI guy is telling him, hey man, you should really get some sleep. And Jenkins is like, well, I'll tell you when I'm gonna get some sleep. Like, I don't need sleeping advice from my security guard. So all of a sudden, we have a shot being fired, and so this FBI guy is to get killed off, and they end up going into Jenkins' home, and Jenkins is to realize this, so he tries to go into a certain, I think, closet and hide out to eventually get shot and killed. Where he's mentioning like, well, don't I have a right to like to live in this country? Like this is the United States of America. And then we just have Jenkins, who is to just kind of fade off into black, basically, and is to die here. I'm like, oh, like I really actually did like Jenkins, um, really, you could probably have seen him as like the villainous character against John Dutton. But you know what I think? Like the guy was to eventually find like some kind of way out of here, where Jenkins was to eventually go and talk to John and say, "Hey, how about you just buy me out and I can just get out of here? Like I just don't care. Like I just want to get out." So, but yeah, so Jenkins is now dead, and I'm like, "Oh, that's too bad." So, like, oh no, no. Like we were expecting it eventually to happen, but anyways, so now John is to go and find out that Jenkins is dead. And so of course, John is now talking to Sheriff Donnie. Donnie's like, "Well, there's no way we're going to hide Jenkins being dead from anybody." Like, and so John is like, "Well, how much time can you give me to hide this?" And like hide this as best as you can until you have to reveal it out to people. And Sheriff Donnie's like, "Well, you have about 24 hours." And he's like, "Okay, that's good enough." So Sheriff Donnie is telling John that he has to go through this the right channels. And so that is really what Sheriff Donnie is telling John, and that's what John is gonna try to do. But also John. So Casey is going and talking to Monica, and so eventually Monica is to tell Casey, it's like, well, hey, if you find the guys who were to have taken Tate from us, like you kill them. And he's like, okay, like I can easily do that. So Casey is to get a warrant and is to go to Teal Beck's home and basically shoot into him while he's on the turlet. And so Casey is, of course, to ask uh, this guy where Tate is, and he is to, of course, give him an address. And then Casey is to murder him afterwards while he's on the turlet. And so, and this guy is like, "Please don't let me die, not on my toilet." It's like, yeah, you're gonna get killed there. So Casey is also like shoot around the house using this gun, and is to put prints on this gun, and is to basically have it be that this is like this guy's gun. So there's a shootout. This guy ended up being dead supposedly, but anyways. So now we have John going to Beth, telling her that she needs to now make an amendment or whatever on uh, on some things on John's possible will and all kinds of other things. And so Jamie is there with Beth, and so Jamie is just like, well, like who is the person that you're going to add on to this trust? Like who what like what are you gonna do? Because John is adjusting his trust, realizing that he is to know who loves him and who is loyal. So we find that this adjustment of this trust is to have Beth start walking through the ranch to eventually find somebody that is to be added onto this trust. And so that person ends up being Rip. I'm like, yeah, great. So Beth is to go and read this letter to Rip, and is to, at some point in this letter, mention how there are uh, sons that have died or have gone to jail, and that John had given up thinking that he had any more sons, and then he realized that he had all the sons he could have ever wanted. And so basically John is calling Rip his son, and so Rip is kind of getting teary-eyed by that, and he's like, oh my god, he called me his son. So Rip is to be given, I guess, uh, this one thing, this one kind of area to call like his, and so Rip is to have Beth, of course, reread the end of that, where it's like, where John called Rip his son, and so he like feels so good about that. So now John is going in and is having rainwater, wanting to also get the whole Beck situation resolved, but he's also just like, hey man, I want John to get his son back, and so we're gonna figure out a way for that to happen. And so Rainwater is bringing over one of his men to come with these people to help them out. So that way, like, kind of a numbers game kind of situation. So, I'm trying to double back here to think that if I'm missing anything, which I don't think I am. I know there might be one little sliver somewhere of something that I probably forgot about, but I think we're pretty close to kind of wrapping this one up fairly quickly, because it's like once you kind of get past like the kind of the beginnings of this episode, the quicker it is. So we supposedly have Casey, who goes to Rip and is to mention that normally when he was in the military, he was to send a armored car through, and then afterwards, like, the military guys would just go and blast through, and because the armored car would always be like their cover. So this time around, we're gonna have like Rip, and we're gonna have John as basically the equivalent of an armored car, which is to basically be them on these horsebacks, and then everybody else is gonna like come in after them and start guns ablazing through this spot, through this building, to kind of comb through and kill everyone off. So we get here, we set all this up, and so we have, of course, a guy that I don't think actually had a name here, so I think they just went by his actual name. Uh, Mo brings plenty. Mo brings plenty is to, of course, come to this location. And so, since Rip is going to be like basically this armored car equivalent, and everybody's going on and like having uh, their faces kind of having all these, having all this like kind of football esh like stuff onto them, I guess, kind of to where they can kind of blend into the darkness. We have Mo brings plenty, who is to go on and take a piece of this and draw over the horse to say like, okay, now the horse is gonna like run faster, and the horse is gonna be bulletproof. The horse is gonna be this. The horse is gonna be that. And so Rip is telling Mo brings plenty. It's like, well, hey, like, can you ride all over me and do that same thing for me? And the guy's like, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work that way. So, which I thought that was kind of a funny or fun exchange there. So, Rip goes onto the horse, and so he starts this whole thing off. So, John is, of course, following him, and so he's kind of shooting through people. And so, everybody is going on and blasting all the way through all of these people. And so we have the one guy who is to, of course, seem to know where Tate is, but he won't give up that information. So much so that he has to go and shoot himself in the face to not give up this information. But we have our characters go and find where Tate is, anyways, and they go on and they are to, of course, find Malcolm Beck, and they are to find Tate. And Tate is to have eventually, like, one, gotten a haircut, but two, we have Tate who is to kind of, like, at first just kind of be oblivious of who is kind of grabbing him. And Casey had personally gone in there to find Tate, like be the first one in there. So like Tate or Casey had to remind Tate of who he was, and then Casey is to kind of grab Tate and just get out of there. And so John is to go off and find Malcolm and is to kind of shoot him in the chest and shoot him in the hand. And so to eventually get information of where Tate is, and then they transition to find Tate, which is what happens. What I said before, but is to happen after. And so John has to say, it's like, well, hey man, like I'll set you up to get a helicopter here, and they'll helicopter you to the hospital, as he shot him in the chest and shot him in the hand. And so Malcolm gives up this information, and then Malcolm is to eventually tell John that he's sorry he ever met him. And John's like, yeah, I feel the same thing about you. So they end up finding Tate, and so John is to go on and tell Monica, like, hey, that we found him. And so both Malcolm and or Malcolm, Monica, Malcolm is probably going to be dead soon. Monica is to go and hug John after hearing that information. And so Beth goes off and just kind of strolls out. and is to go on and talk to Rip and kind of mention it's like, well, yeah, like, are you sure you want to kind of be like entrusted with us? Because we're probably going to lose the ranch anyways. And Rip is just like, nah, like we'll see about that. And so all of a sudden, like, John is to go out and is to just start blubbering and start crying. It's like, man, like getting an emotional episode here because of course they are. So really Beth starts walking away from John, and so like we kind of just end this episode on a high note and to just transition ourselves into the very next episode, the very next season, the very next whatever the heck else is going to go on here. So yeah, like didn't expect this to end so quickly or me to like talk about this so quickly, but like I also just didn't want to heavily marinate on this one also. So, and plus it was also a very simple episode that just kind of had one goal to it, and like everything else just kind of like there's bits and pieces where it's like, oh, that sucked, or oh, that was an interesting way to play this out. But either way, this movie played out, or this episode, I mean, played out fairly interesting to get Tate back, and so like we did actually get Tate, like he wasn't dead or something like that. So, and there wasn't going to seem to be an escalation after this, but it'd be kind of interesting to see where John and Rainwater are like after this whole event, like now that the Becks are dead, like who's going to be the next person to step up and try to kind of like fight for real estate, literally in this movie or in this show. I mean, so with that said, I think I am. I think I'm good. I think I covered most of this, so I think I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody. Yeah, because I think most of this is covered. Like, I think I might not have gone into thorough thickness of dialogue, but that's always to happen. So, with that said, bye, everybody. Bye.